Hello everyone! Today we're going to be jumping back into Standard with a blue-white artifact aggro deck. Now the main focus of this deck is having unblockable creatures dealing large amounts of damage to kind of close out the game particularly quickly. We can see that kind of coming to fruition with our Cryptic Coat, a truly unblockable creature. We've got Ginger Brute. We also have a kind of a fun niche case here where we can make ourselves a flyer if we solve our case, and a couple of other strong effects like Skrell for protection to make sure that our creatures are actually capable of dealing combat damage. Now we do have the deck list down in the description, but I am going to briefly go over a couple of things that we've added. We have Duskro's Reliquary. This is great removal. Oftentimes sacrificing an artifact or creature is going to be something super easy for us. Novice Inspector makes this a clue token. That's 1 mana for a 1/2 body and another artifact. That's strong. Skrell is an artifact. If you guys haven't seen the new case, Case of the Filched Falcon, when it enters the battlefield, we get our clue token. If we have 3 or more artifacts, which we almost always will, we can go ahead and pay 3 mana to sacrifice this case and put 4+1/+1 counters on a non-creature artifact, turning it into a 0/0 bird with flying, and notably 4+1/+1 counters on it. So this gives us a 4/4 flyer, pretty strong. Spyglass Siren does a similar thing to Novice Inspector, except it makes a map token, and we all know what Ginger Brute does. Now, Michiko's Reign of Truth is one of the all-stars in this deck. If we get this out onto the battlefield, it's going to be giving huge buffs to our creatures. Ideally, we want to be using this on something like a Ginger Brute or our Cryptic Coat, so we have it on a big unblockable creature, making sure that we're dealing a ton of damage. Subterranean Schooner's in here just to turn our Novice Inspector and Spyglass Siren into a little bit more threatening creatures, with the Exploring giving them +1/+1 counters and converting them into a 3/4 vehicle, because that's pretty strong. But we are only running 2 copies there. Last thing to talk about is our Glyph. We saw that in our other deck as well, and this is just very powerful in artifact decks. 3 mana to turn one of our tokens into a 5/4 is really powerful, and when this does leave the battlefield, we get to discover 3, so that could pretty much pull any of the cards that we have out of our deck and let us play them. Land base, fairly straightforward. We have a Ganjo, we have Otawara for some interaction, and we actually do include 2 copies of Restless Anchorage here. We really like the bird because it's flying, it's evasive, and when it attacks we can get a map token, which is another artifact. So we do get a lot of value out of this creature land, even though it enters the battlefield tapped. With a super low mana curve, this is a very strong aggro deck. But if you guys have been enjoying my videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on my latest content. And if you do enjoy this video, make sure you give it a like. Let's go ahead and see how this deck does. Alright, looks like we've got our opponent going first, but a decent starting hand. We'll go ahead and keep. Not the best mana base per se, but we are going to start with our tap land. Playing up against a black deck, so I imagine there's going to be a decent amount of discard going on here. No? Dimir? Alright, Fairy Mastermind, that's fine. Alright, we'll play out our white land, and we'll go Novice Inspector, Investigate, Spyglass Siren. Now we have a blocker for the Fairy Mastermind. Everything's looking pretty good for us. Next turn, we can think about either our Glyph or the Cryptic Coat. Cut down so they can attack with the Fairy Mastermind. Maybe they're holding up a negate still. We can't really know about it. We're going to play our Coast, since this is the last turn it'll come in untapped. And I think we're going to go for the Golem. Golem on our map token. Alright, looks like our opponent didn't have the counter spell. Maybe they have the removal spell. Fairy Mastermind. Sure, yeah, no good blocks there, so we deal our damage. Next turn we can go Cryptic Coat and then Inspector. We're definitely outpacing our opponent in terms of damage right now, so I'm not concerned. Shieldred might be an issue, but I'm not seeing one just yet. So we're going to go Cryptic Coat here. Alright, let's see what we hit. Just a land, so honestly pretty good for us. I'm going to move to combat. I'm going to swing out again. They destroy the Glyph, which is fine. They'll block the Novice Inspector. Yeah. What do we get here? Cryptic Coat for free. Honestly, that's really good for us. And we'll play out another Novice Inspector. Get another clue token. This puts us in a great spot. We've got 6 damage. Next turn we can play out our Glyph again. Sure. Yeah, we'll take 7. I'm actually not too concerned about that. Now let's go for our Glyph on the clue token. This will draw Counterspell if they have it. Alright, so then maybe they have removal. Do I want to use the Reliquary now? I don't think so. I think I'm just going to swing out. We're going to leave the Novice Inspector back. Sure, Tidebinder. Blockers. They block the Glyph, most likely. Yeah. Down to 8. We'll play out our Skrelv. Then go ahead, sack here. We can block Urtai, so we're just going to hit a Fairy Mastermind there. This is just to protect us, so we have a little bit better of a chance of blocking. Our opponent's going to have to keep some creatures back. Probably going to swing for 2 with the Fairy Mastermind. Alright, Kaido, that's fine. Alright. So yeah, we're in a really good spot. We're just gonna choose proc white. Or not proc white, sorry, proc black here. And then we'll go ahead and animate this. We'll take the damage, and then move to combat. Leave him back and swing out. And we've got it. Alright, going first. This looks like a good starting hand as well, so we'll go ahead and keep. Gonna play our tap land first. Might be a little bit of a slow start, but I do like where we're at. I'm gonna get Skrelv out onto the battlefield, and we're gonna play our case. We have a couple of different options for next turn. Skrelv draws the removal spell, and that's fine. I think we go for our Glyph and start hitting our opponent. 5 damage. And I guess that's good enough. Alright, so we've got our opponent going first here, but a pretty nice opening hand. I have no problem keeping this. What I'm thinking is we're gonna go ahead and start with our case. Just because I don't want our Skrelv to die immediately. Next turn we can play out the Schooner, and then we can play Skrelv after that. Alright, so let's go with our wastes here. When we have to choose between Aganjo and Otawara, I'm thinking we're going to want to keep Otawara, just because we're playing up against a mono black deck. Though maybe it's going to be worth it to keep Aganjo for the Preacher. Actually, I think what I'm going to do here is I'll play this out. We're going to go Duskrow's Reliquary, sacrifice that. We'll get rid of you. Now we can play out Skrelv. And we can play out the Spyglass Siren. Since the Siren has flying and is evasive, we'll go ahead and use that to crew. And then we'll move to combat and attack, explore here. I want the Glyph, so that's perfect. Deal our damage and pass the turn. We've solved our case, so now for 3 mana we can go ahead and turn one of our non-creature artifacts into a bird. Yeah, that's fine. Virtue on Skrelv. Looks like our opponent may have missed a land drop as well. So let's go ahead and drop our glyph on the token. And we'll crew here. And we've got it. Okay, looks like we've got our opponent going first. Not a bad starting hand, though, so we will go ahead and keep. We definitely have been very lucky with our previous games, managing to build that value lead on our opponents. I expect to do a similar thing here. Opponent starts with a tap land, and we'll mirror them the same way. We have more than enough lands to do what we want here. I think I'm gonna go ahead and actually play down our second tap land. You could make a case for playing faster since our opponent's been so slow in the early game. But I personally don't mind this. Next turn we have our glyph. So we know they'll be blocking. Or at least I imagine they would. Either way, we have a lot of pressure on the board for it being turn 3. Opponent might be ramping towards a larger creature, but this is why we're hanging onto the reliquary. Okay, outrageous robbery, sure. I'm actually perfectly fine with that. Now we have a couple different options for what we could do here. I think I'm gonna save us a little bit of value with the cards, attack here, get ourselves a map token, and then swing, hit our opponents down to 11. We're gonna be in a good spot. Next turn, we might play out the case, so that way we can go ahead and turn one of our map tokens into a 4/4 bird. I do want to be able to dodge a board wipe, because they will probably be playing the new black board wipe. Cryptic Coat. I mean, that's a pretty cool card. I'm happy that they have it. You know, it's a fun one. We'll see, though. They still can't block us too well. Okay, that's fine. Reliquary hits the token. Yeah, they should have hit the glyph there. We get Reign of Truth. That's gonna be really strong. Unfortunately, we don't get too much out of that first trigger. But we are still gonna be in a good spot. Alright, so there's a little bit of extra. Let's go ahead and play this out. And then, let's see. Do I want Skrelv? No, I think we're just gonna go ahead and animate our land. Get another token. The map token is gonna let our enchantment flip into a bigger creature. Block with the face down card, sure. Opponent's down to 9. Case is solved, so for 3 mana we can go ahead and get ourselves a 4/4 flyer. I think Skrelv will also be good to get out onto the battlefield. Yeah. So we go ahead and flip this. Let's play Skrelv. Again, I do want to be careful not to overcommit, just in case our opponent has a board wipe, so we'll go ahead and animate our land once again. And we'll move to combat. Hit for 3, get another map token. We'll end the turn here. Yeah, and I imagine if they had a removal spell, they would have used it. That's fine. And they're not casting huge outrageous robberies, and I don't expect our opponent to be getting anything particularly high value off of us. I would say Glyph is actually really good on Duskgrow's Reliquary as well, since it has Ward 2. That is a fun interaction that we have. Okay, play a land, sure. They have to find a way to deal with the portrait. And either way, as if we untap with Skrelv, I think we'll be able to protect against pretty much whatever it is that they play out. We can use Duskrow's Reliquary, sacking a token as well, to clear a blocker. So I think lots of ways out. Oh, yep, there's the Deadly cover-up, so they play the board wipe. Now, I do think we can take a little bit of a risk here. Perfect, yep. Not concerned with that. Okay, Gingerbrew is also pretty fun, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to turn our Clue token into a 4/4 flyer. And we're going to try and pump it up to 6 with these map tokens. Alright. We need this to be a non-land card. Unfortunately, that is not the case. So let's just play out Skrelv. We swing for 4 in the air. And then we'll end the turn here. This will give us the most options for our next turn. We can Gingerbrew, use our map token to maybe get that +1/+1 counter for 2 damage. We have either of our anchorages, so we'll definitely survive the board wipe. And between Gingerbrew and the Restless Anchorage, again, we have 2 creatures that our opponent's going to have to deal with, even if they're able to wipe the board. So they need a board wipe and a removal spell to stay in the game here. They do have one of our cards, but I don't think that's going to be enough. Now, if they do have a flyer, if they grabbed, say, our Siren, that would have been probably the best for them, since they'd be able to block the Anchorage. And then they could maybe get around Gingerbrew some other way. Alright, so Discover 4. They find Go for the Throat. That's pretty fun. All of my creatures are artifacts, so that's not a very useful spell to have. But it is good to know that they have Go for the Throat. I'll keep that in mind when I'm thinking about the out with Restless Anchorage. Since this is not an artifact creature, they'll be able to hit it with Go for the Throat. Duskrow's Reliquary, sure. Yep, they exile our token. Alright, we'll play our land. I'm gonna go Gingerbrew first. We'll go ahead, sack our map to try and give him the +1/+1 counter. And we get it. I don't want to draw that next turn if it comes to that, though. We'll go ahead and use our Anchorage here. And we're gonna pay 1 white mana to make Gingerbrew unblockable. Let's move to combat, and we've got it. Alright, on the play, gonna go ahead and keep. This actually looks like a pretty good starting hand. Turn 1, I think we'll get out our Inspector. Turn 2, we can play our Case and the Inspector again. Turn 3, we'll have Reign of Truth with a bunch of tokens. So there's going to be a pretty solid buff. Alright, so we're playing up against a Gruul aggro deck. I actually think we can out-aggro them, which is really nice. We're going to solve our Case this turn. And things are looking pretty good. Red Herring, alright, sure. Hasty Creature, it's a 3/3, no need to block. And we're gonna start outpacing here. Let's go Michiko's. Boost the Inspector. Play the Gingerbrew. Swing out. And right now, we're just gonna try and deal more damage to them than they can to us. And I think we're gonna be winning that game. Yep, give itself haste. Alright, we'll go ahead, give it to the Ginger Brute. Pay 3 here. Get a bird. Move to combat and swing out. And we've got it. Alright, so as we were able to see here, this deck is really strong at capitalizing on our early game and taking full advantage of our artifact creatures. As a fun note, which we didn't get to see but I did mention briefly, Duskrose Reliquary having Ward 2 is actually really powerful when paired with either our Glyph or our Case here, since we can give Ward to the creature that we're going to be making out of this, since it's a non-creature artifact. But aside from that, we are definitely focusing on getting a lot of power on the board early. We're focusing on having unblockable or evasive creatures by using Skrelv, by using the Coat, by using the Ginger Brute to make sure that our damage goes through, and then kind of beating our opponent as we're kind of racing down with life totals. Now there is also another version of this deck that I've seen out in Standard, which is pretty fun. It's another Cryptic Coat deck, and it's in the Izzet colors, so blue and red. That's also very fun, so if you're interested in kind of seeing me try and play that deck, definitely let me know. But aside from that, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you have any ideas for another deck that you'd like to see me play, why don't you let me know in a comment down below. I'll see you all next time.